Hello and welcome everyone to this week's COT review. I'm Thomas from COTbase.com. Today we're going to be looking at the 11th COT report of 2019. I've already opened our first market for the review, which is lean hogs. It is on top of our list with respect to largest changes in commercials positions. And you can see it's 50% in commercials, 27 in large speculators, and 57 in small speculators. So huge changes. Actually the largest changes in the past 1 year, so a significant COT signal that we have right now. Of course, if you look at the chart and the price of lean hogs, you can see that it has been steadily and pretty dynamically rallying in the past 2-3 weeks now. So this signal is coming at a point in time when, of course, the risk reward could be pretty great for us right now. But of course, judging by the dynamics of this price movement, one should be very cautious with any sudden trade. One thing's for sure, the COT change signals are indicating a decline early next week. And now we have the 5-year chart in front of us, meaning we could easily examine the COT Extreme situation, which, as you can see, is more or less neutral in commercials and large speculators. But in small speculators positions, we can see a huge extreme that, of course, you can see over here as well. They have become net long, which in itself can be considered a bearish signal, of course. And of course, well, not too large, but 57 report extreme, meaning that commercials have not been as extreme in this market for over a year now. So all in all, I would say that the COT report is indicating lower prices to come in the lean hogs market. We may need to wait a few more weeks for that to actually happen. Our next market will be the Mexican peso. We have a 33% change, not only in commercial positions, but also in large speculators. We are talking about a currency futures market, so this 33% can be considered very, very large. It's pretty visible as well over here on the charts as well. So we are expecting the Mexican peso to move downwards, although as you can see on Friday's price movement, there has been already a decent decline. So who knows, maybe this signal is a little bit late for us to act upon. But if we jump to the 5-year chart, we can examine the COT Extreme, which, as you can see, is clearly significant. It's at a very high stress level. It is bearish. Unquestionably, you can see and analyze previous bearish extremes in the market, and you can see how well those signal these tops in the Mexican peso. So we are expecting a decline happening in this market, and the report is pretty obvious and very clear. The next market is feeder cattle, where we have this 30% change in commercials positions, 38 in large speculators. Again, very large changes, although maybe not the largest in the past 52 weeks. And of course, it is suggesting a decline early next week. Jumping to the 5-year chart, we can have a chance to examine the COT Extreme. We are moving away from bullish extreme levels without any reasonable reaction from the market. So of course, it's a good example that not always do we have a COT Extreme signal that will be effective and useful for us. So that's that. You can see that small speculators pretty much correlating with commercials, which of course means that, or we know that a lot of commercial participants simply do not reach the reporting limits of CFTC, which would be required to fall into the commercials category. That's just an interesting fact that I just wanted to remind you about. Moving on to large speculators COT Extreme signals, we have live cattle on top of our list with a all-time COT Extreme. Jumping to the 5-year chart, that will become visible to us very easily. You can see also small speculators, not necessarily at an all-time extreme, but on this 5-year chart pretty visibly at a very significant extreme. This is of course signaling us a top. Of course, patience is a very important requirement for a trader in trading, of course, based upon COT signals, because these COT extremes, if you look at the chart, we have been witnessing this significant extreme for quite some time, and you can see the market did not react. So that's why I'm just saying be cautious. Although the signal seems to be huge, great, and wonderfully nice, that doesn't mean that this can't go on for a couple more weeks or even month before the market reacts. It's just simply saying that we have a stress level that we've never seen in the COT history of live cattle. So it seems to be a good opportunity that we should analyze more closely in our own trading system. Mexican peso we talked about, so we're going to jump over that and open the Kansas City wheat, which we've analyzed last week in the review. We had that bullish extreme, which of course did not change. It's still there. It increased further. And what's positive for this signal is that the market did not decline further. It didn't rally much at all, but we're still there. So this could easily turn out to be a good signal for us if we look back in time in a couple more weeks. Feeder cattle, we talked about that, so we're just going to jump over to the British pound, which of course is interesting for us to analyze because of Brexit. So we're going to jump over to the 5-year chart and see whether or not the COT report is telling us anything about it. And interestingly, we don't really have an extreme right now. We are more or less in between the two extremes, as you can see on this 5-year chart. We are moving away from a bullish COT extreme that was present in the market somewhere middle of 2018. You can see that there was a bit of a rally, but it fell further down, making new lows compared to that extreme. So not necessarily the best COT extreme signal that we had. And since then, the extreme has moved away from bullish levels, headed towards bearish levels, which of course in itself can suggest us that there may be a decline coming in the British pound. So not much that we gathered from the COT report that could help us decide which direction British pound will be headed in the next couple of weeks or month. So that was all for this review. Of course, you can do a more in-depth and detailed COT analysis if you log on to COT Base. You can see we have a lot of different equipments that you can use. I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope to see you next week. Have a great weekend. Take care. Goodbye.